Direct from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This is Raf's Cast, Tales from MohawkAd. This is the podcast for the advertising program students at Mohawk College and also to advertising students all over the world. We're today speaking with Alumni Hussein Rumaithi. He will tell us about amazing experiences like presenting in the page competition for the one show in New York for the one-ones competition and end up being art director for FCB Canada. Here we go. Please also subscribe us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music, Amazon Music. Let's do it. Hussein. Welcome to Raf's Cast, Tales from MohawkAd. This is episode 16. And I have here Hussein Rumaithi to our... Did I get your last name correct? Yeah. Okay, good. Yes. It's so cool. I love those last names. Yeah. So we're going to get today Hussein, who's one of the most memorable alumni from our program. Even though there's been just 2 years since you left the program, we really talk about you a lot, and we will discuss the reasons here. Now, Hussein has been 2 years as an art director of FCB Canada in Toronto. So, hello, welcome, Hussein, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. That was some high praise off the front. I was not prepared for that.
Well, it is true. I need to say to you, because besides you being you help your peers, you get pretty much every single year all the student awards on the college and outside of the college, and you automatically went directly to the business after you graduate. So I wanted to know your path to that story, and I think you have a lot of advice for our current students on that front. So I want to talk to you first. How do you decide to go to the advertising program, to go to advertising?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So we go back to like high school. And I was not enjoying high school. I was like, I want to be done with high school. I want to do something else. So there was, I was talking to my guidance counselor, and he was telling me, hey, you're available for a co-op. I was like, okay, I'll do a co-op. And he's like, okay, so what would you like to do a co-op in? And I don't know, I'd done a media arts class in high school. And I remember, it was the first time I stayed in class after the time went, like it was time to go, class ended, but I stayed in class working, and it was media arts, and we were editing a video. Uh-huh. And that was the first time I stayed after class, because usually, class is done, you want to go out. But that was the first time. So I enjoyed media arts, but I never knew that, I was creative in any way. I didn't consider myself creative. No one in my family is creative. It was never really a path, like an option for me. But I remember I enjoyed that media arts class. So when he asked me, okay, where do you want to do a co-op? I don't know where it came from, but I said graphic design. I'd never graphic designed before. I don't know anything about it, but I just said graphic design. So
okay.
He's like, oh, do you know how to graphic design? I was like, yeah, sure. And he's like, okay, sure. He didn't care. So he's like, okay, I'll reach out to a few places in Hamilton, and we'll see if we get you a co-op. So I'm like, okay. Whenever I go on my day, a few days later, he gets back to me. He's like, oh, come to my office. I go to the office, and he's like, there's a place who are willing to take you. It was in Hamilton. I'm not sure if you know, it's called the Cotton Factory. And it's basically, it used to be a cotton factory, and then it got turned into a creative arts place where they rent out units for creatives. So you have people like woodworking and designers and photographers will rent places there. So they took me in as a co-op. And he's like, oh, when can you start? And I think it was like a Thursday. And I was like, oh, next week. So I spent Friday and the weekend downloading Adobe programs and then watching tutorials, learning, teaching myself all of the programs. So
Were you afraid? Oh my God, what I did? And
a little bit. I was afraid, but I was also excited because I'm like, okay, I know I'm gonna learn something. Like, this.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, even if this goes awful, I can just play the student card and say, oh, he's in high school. You know, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I was, I think, more excited than afraid, to be honest. Anyway, so I spent the weekend downloading the programs, looking up tutorials. Monday came, and I started my first day. And the lady there, her name was Annette. She's like, "Oh, we have this room. We want to like do it like almost like an ad or a poster for the room, and like to it's a new room that's available." I'm like, "Okay." Now, I didn't know how long a poster is supposed to take. I think I had no idea of how long these were supposed to take. So she gives me it, and I go to my desk and I'm working, and in like an hour, I rush back. I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be late." I thought, I don't know, like a poster is supposed to be done in like 20 minutes or something. So I rushed the poster. I sent it back to her, and she was an older lady. She's like, "Oh, this is really nice," and she would keep complimenting my work, but I thought, she's being nice because I'm a young student, and I never took her feedback too seriously because I just thought, she's just being sweet. Anyway, so that was, I did the co-op and I ended up really enjoying it, and because I had to learn out of fear of people finding out that I don't know what I'm doing, I taught myself quickly the programs. So the co-op ended, high school ended, and now it's time to pick a place to do my post education. And of course, my parents being from the Middle East, they're expecting engineers, they're expecting a doctor, they're expecting something traditional. And I don't know, part of me was like, I'm sure if I put my head down and I don't enjoy the 4 years or the 5 years, whatever it may be, to go to university and do those programs, I'm sure I could do it, but I want to try something different. I just want to try. And if it goes badly, I have time. I'm young. I can do something else. So that was not what they wanted to hear, of course, but they appreciated that I was like, I will take the responsibility. Like if this goes badly and, I can't cut it out in the creative field, then, it's on me and I will do, it's my responsibility, basically. So they're like, okay, if that's how you want to do it, no problem. And then they're like, okay, you do what you want to do. So my parents were, they weren't happy about it, but they also didn't hold me back. So
that's what I'm saying. I think it's the supporting from family, understanding from family. It's super important too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But you're still unsure.
Exactly.
That okay.
Exactly. So they said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then do it. And so I didn't want to move away too far from home, so I wanted to stay in Hamilton. So I went on Mohawk and I was looking at the programs, and I was thinking graphic design, or I was between graphic design and advertising. But I found when I read the description for the program, and then I was looking at the I don't know, those like reports, the program reports that show like how many people got a job afterwards, and like there's like stuff like that. So I was reading the description, and what interested me was the business and creative. There's an opportunity to do both, and I was like, okay, it's nice. That way, everyone's happy. If I do the first year and I find out creative is not for me, I'll do business, and I'm sure I could do business. So that was a nice sort of safety net as well, just to know that if anything,
if you're not be able to go to the creative part,
exactly. So
how was your feeling through the first year? How were you feeling?
My thing is going to the program, like I was telling you, like I didn't consider myself creative at all. Like if you asked me before the program, would you consider yourself creative? I would have said not really, because it was interestingly something that just didn't sort of come to the surface, or like be explored, right? So it was, I guess, in me in somewhere, but I didn't really explore it. So, if you were to ask me, are you creative? I would have said maybe not really. And also, I didn't know much about advertising. My parents don't know anything about advertising because we immigrated here in 2003. So, and from back home, advertising not really a thing. It's certainly not like a booming industry like it is, here in the West. So, so they didn't really understand what it was either. So, when I was coming to the program, I used to think like, companies, brands did their own advertising. Like BMW, they did their own commercials. I didn't think there was an agency in the middle.
I see.
So that goes to show you how much I knew. I knew it like that much. So the first year, it was exciting for me because, like, what I was saying earlier is I was really eager to get out of high school. I wanted to do something different, because I was like, yes, I'm doing these classes, but I want to learn something different. So I was really eager in first year to, absorb everything, be like a sponge, because I knew nothing. And I knew I had to prove to myself, first of all, that I could cut it in this creative field, given that I have no history. So I had the pressure of, saying to my parents, look, I'm going to do something creative. Me personally, not even really knowing if I could or couldn't. So there's like pressure that I put on myself as well to prove, that I can cut it. And, my mindset was, everyone else here, I'm sure they, whether this was true or not, but I would think, oh, they're creative, or they have a friend or a family member, or they really want to be in advertising. So they have a head start because they know a bit more about it. So I put extra pressure on myself to assume that I was at the last, if it was a Formula One race, I was at the end of the grid, and I had to do everything I could to get, because that's the way I position myself. Like, you're at the very end and you have to, beat everyone to get to the top.
And how was that feeling with your peers? What do you perceive right away on the kind of people begin to brainstorm and create?
Yeah, exactly. I remember it was, I think it was a class with Robin. It was like a media class.
Media class, okay.
That's where I met Nate. I sat next to Nate.
Okay.
Yeah. I sat next to Nate, and then I think a class before I met Cheryl, just randomly, just coincidence. I sat next to her, and so Robin was like, "Okay, get in groups of 4 or 5." So I was like, "Oh, Nate, come! I know Cheryl." So I brought Nate to Cheryl, and then I think Cheryl had known Shanice and Ailsa at the time. So just coincidence, exactly. The coincidence, and it all came together to have a really strong group from the first week. And from there, I guess it was luck, or but also after a few classes, you kind of know who are the students who are super serious. So yeah, it was from there, and I mean, this, right? Like that year that I was in, I was fortunate, and I benefited from other students taking it seriously.
Yes.
And really pushing the level, because then I go, okay, like I said, if I'm at the end of the grid, it helps me if whoever's at the beginning or the top, if they're going faster, because now I have to go faster, So I was fortunate that it was a strong year, and you work off of other people. So if you see someone do something great, you're like, okay, that's the new level, and then you beat it, and they beat it, and you push each other. So.
And when you realize that, oh, okay, I'm going creative, I think I can go creative.
I think back to I had my first assignment with Jeff. Sorry, it was like 40 thumbnails or something, and I was like, okay, this is the opportunity to test yourself and see what you can do, like if you're gonna cut it or not. And I did the assignment. I did it with Nate. I think we got like a 58%. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, that was not what I wanted to see, of course. But I was like, at first I was a bit disappointed about it, but I was like, okay, there's next week a new assignment. I'd try again. And, I don't have a choice. I can sit here and be sad about it, but the weeks are going to come and assignments are going to come. So the next assignment, it was like, I worked twice as hard. Because okay, I'm clearly this is going to take a lot of effort to get me from 58 to where I want to be. So I worked extra hard, and I saw, I got like a 67 or something. I was like, oh, okay. So now there's a bit of a correlation. I worked extra hard and I got better marks. So if I keep doing this, maybe I can get better. Maybe there's a chance, and so that was my mindset. I was like, okay, you just work twice as hard every time. And it sounds cliche, but that's really what it came down to, because I didn't know anything else. I'm like, I didn't believe I had any kind of talent or, past experience. So everyone else might have extra head starts, with, past experience with creative work, or, a history with someone who they know is in advertising,
I see.
Regardless, I have to, I can't control, but what I can control is how hard I work. And so that was my mindset. And, once I started seeing improvement, I said, okay, I think it was maybe a third, 3/4 through the program. And that's when I started to build a relationship with you and Jeff, and really take on the feedback and look for my weaknesses. Like, okay, where am I weak? And then, focus on that and try and get it better. Where at that point I was like, okay, there's a chance here. There's a chance for me. It's worth it. It's worth it to try going creative. I think it was around 3/4 of the way through the first year.
It's just strange you're talking to me this story right now, because I remember in first year I was talking to Jeff and say, "Oh my God, you see that Hussein guy? He's gonna be a star. He's gonna be like among a few other people in your class.
Yeah.
Where you're in the list of people that say, oh, they're super strong, they're super good, and all of you guys are good now. So I think most of you. So I think it's strange how the different perceptions at different times. But of course, we don't want to tell you guys this. So because we're trying to keep pushing even more. You know what I'm trying to say.
Keep our feet on the floor.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But how was that? I remember you got on the first year the National Advertising Challenge. You placed. How was that experience?
That was it was great, because I think, one thing that when I talk to students, students will ask me to look at the book and just give them some advice. And one thing I remember that was a big shift for me was, in my mind I was like, okay, I need to be at least the best in the class, or like up there because, everyone would always say creative is really tough and getting a job is really tough. So my mind was like, hey, if you can't even be the best in your class, how do you expect to, compete with all these other schools and people from around the world to get a top job? So in my mind, I was like, okay, you have to be at the top of your class to even have a chance in the real world. So seeing, award shows and having you guys push us and open our eyes to, okay, you're not just the best in your class, but the best in the country, for example, so that set the bar even higher. And I went, oh, okay. So placing in there was fantastic, and just being exposed to award shows and that level of work, it pushes you even more. It's like, okay, just, you may be one of the best or, top in the class, but there's even another bracket,
Yes. Another league.
Exactly.
And it keeps going.
Exactly. So that was great, because it's like, okay, that helped us, it pushed us, it's like, even though you're doing well now, you're getting good grades, but there's more. So it was eye-opening to know that there's more to keep you going.
One thing that I can tell you, besides Apply Arts National Advertising Challenge twice, how was the experience at one show in New York? You did a client pick twice, isn't it?
Yeah, twice.
So one with Cheryl and one with Shanice. So I remember seeing those presentations in New York, and I remember during the Creative Week and the one-to-ones. And I say, oh my God, they're really getting to the storytelling and tell the story about those two campaigns. Can you please describe to students how important it is not only to do the craft, but also be able to present and the story behind it?
Yeah, massively. I mean, now that at the time I maybe didn't think so deeply as to the importance of it, but now that
I can imagine even now. How you think it works? Yes.
Yeah. Now it's like, oh wow, it's like it's you can have a $1 billion idea, but if you can't sell it, it means nothing. If you can't get the client, or even just forget the client, your creative director, to buy into a story or to see the vision, then your idea it's stuck in its place. So.
Saying, can you please describe to the students who are currently at college? In a very short story of those two campaigns and how the presentation went, because you placed in the top 3 with schools all over the world, online schools. Yes. So
and I'm not saying this because you're here, but it was the strategic planning classes that we did played a huge role, because that gave us the foundation, the formula for the narrative, and that arc that you kind of taught us actually played a huge role in both presentations, and we used the same one. And what was interesting is when we went to New York and we saw the other ones, they had a different flow, and it was almost like this was like the Mohawk flow. It was unique,
I see.
So I think that played a big role. But so to answer your question, the two ideas, I think the first one was with Shanice, and it was for Sonnet Insurance. And essentially Sonnet Insurance is like an online insurance company targeted to a younger group, trying to make insurance seem like not like so evil, like not like a necessary evil that everyone hates. like a nice insurance company, if you will. And so we had this idea, long story short, of surprising influencers with gifts on their wish list, that revolved around big life milestones. So if someone on their Amazon wish list had like a baby crib, we knew that, oh, they might be having a baby soon. So, a big life milestone is happening, and that's when insurance comes to play, right? You're getting a baby, you might need a bigger car, a bigger house, and then you think about insurance. So we thought, we'll surprise them with the gift, and then we'll have a camera in it to capture the reaction. I mean, that was the idea, but the pitch was, how do we kind of tell the story, and how do we, paint a picture beyond the execution, and why does this work? It's like defending your idea. It's like, given the all the truths, the consumer truth, the product truth, the category truth, how do you? Why, like, it's almost like saying, why is this going to work? And you set up a case and you defend it, and you say, well, it's going to work because of these reasons. This is what people think, so we're going to do this. People expect this, so we're going to do this. And just building that case around the core idea, but there's so much more, right? It's we got into research and data, and it's rigorous stuff, but it makes the idea bulletproof, if you will. So it's nice to have an idea, but once you can surround it with all this information, then it makes it hard for someone to say, I don't think it's going to work, because you've done the work,
How about the other one?
The other one, yes, the second year. So the second year it was for craft.
Yes.
And it was, essentially the brief was like, how do we make craft the talk of, parents around the new school year? So when new school year comes around, how do we get parents talking about craft? And this was a funny one. This was, don't ask, okay? But it was not for school or anything. I was looking up research around single parenthood, just like interested in like the stats of what happens to the children of single parents, and how that effect on them in the long term. I was just doing that for me. I don't know why at the time, but I was interested in learning more about it. So I was looking into it, and I was finding this just staggering statistics around how single parenthood, it's a cycle. And if you're a child of a single parent, the likelihood of you becoming a single parent yourself, or even, worse than those things, like going, if you're a boy, the chance of you going to prison was 60% higher, or, getting into, breaking the law and things like that, falling out of school, getting poor grades, not going to college, all these like just staggering like ripple effects that happened. And the common denominator was single parenthood, and the issues around, how hard it is for a single parent, with the economically or, psychologically, both are so much pressure on single parents. And so I was reading about that, and I was really inspired by just the sheer power of the stats and the information. That when the brief came around, it's like, how do we get parents to talk about craft around the new school? I was like, we have to talk about this. This is like, it just felt, we were fortunate that the brief was about parents. But I was more inspired by, a real life thing. It had nothing to do with advertising or a brief, but it felt like a real message that I was passionate about, getting out. So it was a moment where real life inspired work. And, I think that's when work feels the best, when it feels human and it feels like it's doing something beyond just, selling craft. And that was the work that excited me when I was looking at, real work. It was the work that, in the guise of advertising made a difference in the world. And I think that's why a lot of creatives are in advertising. That's the dream, is to, while selling craft cheese, change the world, or do something special, or, make a lasting impact. So
it's amazing to see how you take the advantage of, I have the power to create this as a student and as a free brief. You really understand the power of what you have in your hands. Yeah. And I think that's what brought you to that idea. You're not afraid.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember, Cheryl and I were going back and forth around this topic, and she's like, I don't know if this topic's right. And, even internally, we kind of kept going back and forth, like, is this right for parents? Like, this is a really, sort of serious topic. Is it right for craft? And we went back and forth, but I think it was like, at the end, we were both like, no, this is we should be talking about this because we were both passionate about it. And and to be honest, even when I went up on stage and I was presenting it, in the back of my mind, I cared more about telling the information than the presentation itself. I was more interested in like, okay, these 60 people, if I can get them to know about this and how important they, like, for example, and I remember at the end I said something along the lines of, if there's one thing to take away, it said, if you know someone who's a single parent, lend a hand and say, ask to help. Because there's a pride in a single parent. A parent doesn't want to say, I need help, that I need help taking care of my kid. That's the worst thing a parent wants to say. Parents want to be that invincible character that can do it all. But the reality is, as a single parent, it's almost impossible.
I was saying that tells a lot about the person you are. I just say it's about the human factor and how much you care about lots of stuff. So I think it's really something, and I think that kind of a mentality also helps with your creative process, because you always think on that positive way or fixing things that are not correct, and so. But how was the experience of presenting in New York, visiting agencies in New York?
It was amazing. I mean, that's, to be honest, those two trips were, I think, my fondest memory of the program, because that was like the peak, right? It was like, going back to first year where I didn't know what I was doing and I was just trying to figure it out, and I was like, can I do it? And I had that self-doubt, and had those years of learning that I mean, the first time was like, oh wow, like somehow the stars aligned and we did it, and maybe there's an element of luck. But then when we did it the second time for a second year in a row, that was the sweetest feeling, I think, and that was the moment I think I was most proud of in the program. Just thinking that I think you were saying this was the first time we'd done it. We'd gone to it, and so to do it 2 times in a row, that was amazing. I think by that point, by third year, I totally transformed, way more self-confidence. I was like, no, I can do this. And it wasn't, it was through the work. It was through doing a lot of work and, seeing gradual improvement that I built that self-confidence. So when third year came around and we did that pitch competition, it was a lot less stressful going there, because it's like, you can kind of enjoy it now because it's the second time around. But no, I loved it. I think it was, I also loved seeing other work, like, this was the top 10 or 11 schools from around the world. And just, again, it kind of takes me back to first year when we saw NAC Challenge. And we're like, oh, wow, this is the level of work. When we saw it again at the pitch competition at the one show, again, it was like, I just loved seeing other work and how people worked, and people at the top of their game, even if they were students at the time.
Of course.
But, it was nice to see, because it was like, okay, that's cool, and you get to appreciate a good work. And it wasn't like I'm I'm competitive, but I'm not. It's like a super friendly competition, if you will. Like, it's never with any malice. Like, I went there, I definitely wanted to win, don't get me wrong, I wanted to come first. But also, if I see something that's cool, I go, okay, props to you, that's that's nice. The idea always comes first. So when we're coming up with ideas and brainstorming, I almost didn't care who came up with it. If we were in a group, I don't care if it was me or someone else, as long as at the end we came up with something that was a great idea. It's almost like we were all working in service of the idea versus in service of me coming up with it. So it was always great to that third time going was fantastic, because it's, by then it was a different experience. The first time I was like, oh my god, everything's new. That was the first time I was in New York. So just the first time I traveled alone too. I remember we went with Shanice, and it was a great learning experience. I think overall, just for me as a person, but also as a creative.
How was the process to get internship? So how was that production of the book, draft of the book, and getting through? Because I remember you like almost moving out to the agency and staying there the whole day and doing back and forth and make it happen. So How's that experience led you to a book to get to FCB?
Mm-hmm. So I remember that time of year. I was, because third year is mostly about refining work and, making sure that your best ideas are perfect and, leaving nothing undone. And so I really got into that. I was like, okay, I'm looking at my book and I go, okay, I have good ideas here, but, how can we push it to the next level? How can we polish it or make the presentation of it perfect? Just thinking of everything and doing it and making the only reason I didn't do something, not because it was going to take too much time or too much effort, but because I didn't think of it. Because I think what you're alluding to is when I moved into the agency, there was the Mac lab, obviously, and there was that one that one computer setup that I was always at. And I basically treated it like a full-time job. So in second year, I was working a part-time job and I was like, okay, I don't need to work. I have enough saved up, so I don't need to work. So I quit my part-time job. And because I was like, it's those hours, I'd rather focus on my book and my school, and whatever money I'm not making I looked at it as like an investment into my career.
Excellent advice.
So, so what I did is like, okay, I don't have a part-time job anymore. So now school became like a full-time job. So, I would come in at 8, I would have my setup and I would leave, whenever the work was done, 8 or 9. And I don't want that to sound like negative. It was not like I was working too late or not getting enough sleep or not eating or, any of that stuff. It was, I was, like I was saying, I was working in service of the ideas. So I was like, oh, there's a really cool idea here. And I was enjoying it. It was just like, how can we make this better? How can we keep pushing this? So when you enjoy something, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like I'm spending 12 hours, even though I did. But when you enjoy it or find a way to enjoy it, it was, it's much easier. So yes, I put a lot of hours in, but what I also knew was, because I saw it in third year, there were some students who would stay up super late or like not eat and they're like literally shaking. And I'm like, what, how are you doing this? Like, how do you work like this? I mean, it's their style and they do it how you want to do it. But I was like, there's no way I can do that. I need my sleep. I need my rest. I need my food because, my brain and my body is what's going to do the work.
You need to have balance.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So that was my secret weapon. I was like, make sure I get good sleep every night. Make sure I'm eating, make sure I take care of myself so that, it's like you're a car, if you don't put good fuel in the car and change the oil, it's not going to drive very well. And so I knew I need to take care of myself, but also, so it's like a checklist. Did I take care of myself? Yes. Next, did I work as hard as possible? Check. And that was the priority, So yeah, it was, I remember around third year, I was just so focused on working on my book and making everything perfect. And I wasn't even thinking about it. Jeff was like, oh, start reaching out to people. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I'll get to it. And then I was one day I was in the agency, of course, working away, and I forget who it was. It was one of the students came in. I was like, oh, they're super happy they got an internship. And I was like, oh, amazing. I was like super happy for them because as students, before someone gets an internship, it feels like the moon away. It feels like this this dream to get an internship.
I see.
Because it just feels so far away. And then when someone got it, it was like amazing. It was like everyone was happy for them. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then someone got it, and I still didn't click. Like, hey, you should probably start talking to people. Just still focused on my book. And then a few more people, and then Shanice and Danielle got one, and then people were starting to leave. Like, I'm like, where are you guys going? Everyone's starting to get internships, and I think I was honestly one of the later people to get an internship because I wasn't thinking about it. I was just focused on my book, and then I got to a point where my book was good enough. I mean, not good enough, sorry, but I was happy with it, and I was like, okay, this is. It doesn't need to get any better than this. This is like, I can spend another 5 hours, but I'm not going to make 5 hours worth of difference. If that makes sense.
I see.
So then Jeff was like, okay, well, start reaching out to people. So that's what I did. And, just cold calling people on LinkedIn. I got my portfolio set up, my website set up, make sure my LinkedIn was nice. and then just reaching out to people, hey, I would love 10, 15 minutes of your time just to, go over my book and, just pick your brain a little bit. And slowly people started to accept my LinkedIn connections. People started to say yes, let's have a meeting, and slowly started to get meetings. And then I remember, it was like, there's 1 week where I had like 3 or 4 meetings lined up, and it was just going to Toronto and, meeting people. And I even remember the first time I showed someone my book, I didn't really know what to do. I was a bit nervous. So I kid you not, I brought up the laptop, I opened up my website, and I just turned the laptop to him and I said, here you go. And he was just looking at me. He's like, do you want to talk me through it? I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Let's just remember that at that time it was a physical sitting beside someone and
back in the old days.
Back in the old days, yes. So how was it? Just open a laptop and say, here it is?
Exactly, yeah. I had no idea what I was doing. I just opened a laptop and I was like, okay. I just pointed towards him and I just sat there waiting for him to, give me some feedback. And then he's like, oh, do you want to like talk me through it? I was like, oh, good idea. And so the first one was a little rough. But by the end, I wasn't nervous per se because it was, I was, I guess, nervous walking to an agency and, talking to someone I don't know. And he's like, a creative director or something like that. But I was also confident in my work. And I knew that I'd put in the work. And, it's always like a presentation. If you prep for a presentation, you're a lot less nervous, because you can rely on that. So I knew the work was not bad, but I just needed to, it was the presentation.
It's funny to hear that you did such an amazing work on the client pitch on the one show. And then when it comes time to the interview, like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's such a discrepancy.
Because I was like, I don't know, do I talk too much? Does he just want to look at it alone? Like, I didn't know if everyone had their own style. So
I see.
So he's like, just talk me through it. And I talked him through it. And so the first one was a little rough, but then I got a few more meetings, and then things started to pick up. I started to meet more people. And I think it's on LinkedIn, like if a student reaches out, but he has, 25 connections, mutual connections, you're more likely to say, okay, and, meet them. So slowly my LinkedIn grew and I started meeting more people, and, it was meeting after meeting. And then I got really, I learned a lot from that first one. I was like, okay, that can never happen again. And so I would look at every idea and think of the pitch. Like, how do I pitch this? How do I talk about it? And, it's like, I did it in my own way. It was like, talking about, where my mind went and like how we landed on a certain insight or a certain idea. Like I remember I had the Tour de France work in my book. And I remember working with Alonso on that one. And,
yes.
There's something interesting about Tour de France when, we got the list of clients. And I was like, something interesting about Tour de France. I had known nothing about it. I knew it was a race about bikes, but I didn't really know, the details of it. So when we first got it, and I was really keen to do, it was a full campaign. So I was like, okay, we got to like really nail this one. And I spent literally hours, just looking up Tour de France content. I was watching post-match interviews. I was watching highlights, like historic documentaries. I just wanted to soak it all in and, really land on an insight or an idea that, because, you have to be informed when you're obviously, doing something. So I was just hours and hours of just like consuming. I mean, first it was entertaining because Tour de France is like, I learned that it was like amazing and the athletes are just like a joke. But it also helped inform, the thinking for the campaign. So, I remember that being an experience of like just like learning something new, learning about this new sport that I didn't really know much about. And when I presented the work, I spoke about that, and I told them like, when we got the brief, we knew nothing about Tour de France, but we went into the details, and there was interesting stories about the Tour de France that I could share, and you then become like an expert, and then you can speak from an informed perspective. And I think the person opposite you always appreciates that, because you're almost teaching them something.
This kind of information is as good as the work itself.
Exactly.
That you can explain and know the client itself like this.
So,
and then when it started to work, you begin to receive the feedback And I think you realize like everybody has a different opinion on.
Yeah. I think it was Jeff's rule, right? He's like, if three people say the same thing, then it's right. But if one person says it, you can maybe ignore them.
Yes.
So and I had confidence in my book and my work, and if your feedback made sense to me, I was like, okay, like if it clicked with me and I can understand it, I wasn't, I didn't have a big ego, and it wasn't like, oh, how dare you say something opposite to mine. But if I needed to, like, I have to believe in what you're saying or agree with it, for me to do it. Like, I can't do something if I don't agree with it, and I think that's, I don't know, maybe both a blessing and a curse, but I think that's what brought me to where I am. It's like, I have to, like, I take your feedback, and if it makes sense to me, then 100% I'll apply it. But if I don't quite believe in it, I can't do it. It's like, there's something that just won't feel right to me. For me to have work that's mine, but do something that I don't really agree with. So, I would listen to their feedback, and I really enjoyed that, like hearing, other people's feedback, professional people's feedback on your work. And I remember I met with Daniel Sagar. He was at Leo Burnett. And this was, I think it was through Wayne's class. How they have the, like, you meet someone and you have like a
network assignment.
Exactly. Okay. And I remember I asked him, at the end, he enjoyed the interview, and he was like, oh, this is a great book. And that was the first time where I got like a really great feedback. And at the end, I was like, I was thanking him for, taking the time. And I asked him, do you know anyone who would, pick up the phone if I reached out to them, because I was looking for people who are nice, or people who have the time, or people who are interested in, looking at a student's book.
Well, of course.
And he was amazing. He wrote like two sticky notes full of names. He was like, oh, wow. He just sat there. He's like, oh yeah, this person. And then he just wrote names and names and names and their agencies. And so I went away smiling from ear to ear.
This is gold.
Exactly. I got it. So I left super excited, because like, oh my God, look at all these names and all these people that, if he's saying that they'll pick up the phone, then I'm confident they will.
And you can say that.
Exactly.
He gave the number.
Exactly. So that's when I was like, oh wow, that's when the networking started to work, and reaching out to people started to work. I not only got good feedback, he liked my book, but he also was willing to almost give me names to reach out to, and that's actually how I got I found out about FCB. So Jeff was when I was in the agency, I talked to Jeff, and he's like, okay, what agencies do you want to go to? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. And I remember I talked to you about this too, and we were talking about, big agency, small agency. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I think I want to go to a small agency, just like, because you can wear more hats, and, you could do more, you're more in control versus being just like a cog in a big machine. And so I was talking to Jeff, and he's like, yeah, well, what agencies do you want to go to? I never thought about it. I was like, oh, it's a great question. And so I went and I just looked up all the agencies in Toronto, like all the top agencies, and I would go look at their work, and I would look at their About Us and the people who work there, and just get like a vibe, just from their website. And I started to,
that's a very good thing. Every student should do that.
Yeah, because it gives you, like, I was thinking, okay, my book is a reflection of me. And the work I like to do, and how my brain works, like people have not styles, but a type of work that they like to do. Someone likes to do funny, weird stuff. Someone likes to do kind of more like big problem stuff. And there's obviously a spectrum in between, but you can kind of get a feel for, oh, this is X person's type of idea, or this is Y person's type of work. So I was looking for an agency that kind of reflected the work that I did. I was like, what agency looks like they could have done one of my ideas if they were to do it. And FCB was one of them. And I was looking at FCB's work, and I was like, yeah, I like their work, and I think it kind of looks like my work. It kind of reflects it. So I was like, okay, I really, FCB interests me. There's also Gray at the time, which I was like, oh yeah, their work too. So I was looking at the sticky notes, and Daniel had written Marty and Mike at FCB. And I reached out to them, and I was excited because I was like, okay, this is this is the agency that I wanted to work for. Before even knowing that that they were on the list, I just looking at their website and their work. I was like, okay, this feels right. And it was like an instinct. It was like a gut thing. And then when I had the interview with Marty and Mike, that affirmed my thoughts about it. I was like, this feels like a nice place to work. They seem like nice people. They're doing nice work. And I met Marty and Mike, and of course I did research on them before meeting them, and they'd won like everything, and so they're super successful. And I was going to meet them, and I was like, oh, like I didn't think that they were going to be bad people, but I thought there'd at least be a little bit of an ego, something, like if you're so successful at a top agency, that's just, in your mind, you kind of think like that. I went and I met them, at the agency, and they were the nicest two people ever. They were like super chill dudes. They were more nervous than me, I think. And they didn't make me feel any way. They were like super nice, super just
so the connection was right there.
Exactly. I was like, okay, I want to work with these people. They just seemed like honest dudes. They were not trying to make it hard or prove anything. There was a nice feeling there. And they liked the work, which was an important factor too. So they liked my book, and like, okay, we'll share this with our boss. Yeah. And I remember I met with them, but before I met with them, he said, I can't meet with you for like another 2 months or something like that. So I had to wait like a month or two before meeting them. And so in the time I was just meeting with other people and still refining, but in the back of my mind, waiting for the FCB interview.
Okay.
Because I was like, just in case, like that might not work out. They might like my book, but it might not work out. So just have a backup plan. So I had the meeting with them, and then they obviously booked another meeting with their CCO. And so at the time I was meeting with Jeff Hiltz. And I had not known Jeff Hiltz, back then. And so I was like, crap, I'm meeting with the CCO. Like now this is like the biggest meeting, I'd ever had, the biggest interview, if you will. But because I'd met so many people beforehand, I met like 9 or 10 people and presented the work and did that pitch and learned from the first one. But like I was as nervous as I was to meet a CCO for the first time at an agency that I wanted to work for. I was also very confident because I'd known, like I knew how to present my work like it was the back of my hand. So we had the meeting with him. I met him, and I mean, Jeff Hiltz, for anyone who knows him, is like the sweetest man ever. he's the sweetest. He's a giant. He's like 6 foot something, but he's just a total sweetheart. And the feeling I had about the agency when I met Marty and Mike was even like double reaffirmed when I met Jeff Hiltz. And he was extremely polite. He would not cut me off once. He let me finish every sentence. And that was like, those were little things that, like you wouldn't think matter, but it was the way I was treated. And I was like, okay, this is the CCO and he's treating me like this. And being so respectful. Even when I was saying rubbish, like I was talking and I was just rambling on. He didn't stop me or interrupt me. He's like, he let me go. So that stuck with me, and that really I still remember that to this day. The way that interview went, and he was super respectful, and he just gave amazing feedback on the work and how to like elevate it, and I fell in love with him in that meeting, and thankfully again he liked the work. And I remember at the end, I don't know if this was a backhanded compliment, but he said, at the end of the interview, he shook my hand. He said, "You're very articulate for a student." And I wish he'd never added the for a student part.
I see.
but I knew what he meant. And so, yeah, but at the time it was interesting. He was saying, "Look, I think you're great. I really like your work. I think you'd be a great fit. But to be honest, we're talking with 2 other art directors from Miami Art School currently so for her internship position. So I can't promise anything, but I'll do what I can." And I was like, that's fair enough. That's as much as I can ask for. And I left that day feeling great. Like, I was like, if whether this works out now or not, it was just, like you have an idea of the industry before you meet people, and what if it's like everyone's mean and it's everyone's going to judge your work and be really harsh. But when I met Marty and Mike and in extension Jeff, it kind of changed my perspective. I was like, oh wow, there's like really nice people in the industry, and so that made me, it would change a lot for me because it kind of showed me a different perspective. I learned from them, and then I was like, look, if this happens or not, that's not in my control. And so I was easy with that. I was like, hey, if this doesn't work, fine. It gave me confidence to know that they like my work that much, that a top agency was at least willing to consider you.
They asked you to come back for a second interview.
Exactly. Exactly. So that gave me confidence. I was like, okay, even if not here, somewhere else, I'm sure it'll work out. And at the time, those other people I was meeting with were also, trying to get meetings arranged with other people. So there was options. So I was feeling good. But
you begin to feel that you're getting there.
Exactly.
You're
like
almost touching the.
Yeah. Every student has like imposter syndrome, and it's like, do I belong here? Am I even good enough? But the more those meetings started to go well, the more that was sort of quiet down. It was like, no, you do belong here, and you're doing something right, and at the very least, you're good enough to be an intern. You're good enough to have a try. So luckily, it was like a week later. Jeff got a LinkedIn message from Jeff, again saying, it was like really great to meet you. I have good news. We want to offer you an internship. And from there it was done. It was I had my, we signed the papers. It was done. I had my internship, and now I was gonna, it wasn't. And I also had a bit of less pressure because I did an internship in second year with
Ange. I remember that.
So I was already going to graduate, so there's less pressure. But it was it worked out well, and I got, I guess, fortunate, or I guess they picked me ahead of those two other art directors. So that was my chance. That was my my foot in the door, if you will.
And what was your first job on FCB?
My first job.
If you remember that, the first thing that gets in your table.
Yeah, I think it was for BMO, and it was a sponsorship for the Calgary Stampede. So it's like a thing that happens in Calgary where BMO hosts it. It's like a cowboy festival almost, and BMO sort of sponsors it, and they do like a domination, So there's like a bunch of assets all over the whole like
arena.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a bunch of assets, and I was helping another art director, and we became friends. I met him, obviously in the first couple of days, you go for lunch and you kind of meet people. And so I met him, and we kind of connected, and we kind of became friends. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to, jokingly, he said, I need your help on something, and because I didn't have a partner, they couldn't really give me, like a full brief. So in the first couple months, I was like a gun for hire. So anyone who needs an art director, Hussein, it's like, so, which was great in hindsight because it gave me a lot of exposure. I was helping a lot of different teams, a lot of different creative directors.
So you get to know everybody.
Exactly. And so he's like, okay, I need your help on this thing. Cause it was a simple task. Like the layouts were more or less the same. But there was just a lot of them. And so you had to be kind of detail oriented. And he, after the first couple of rounds, he was kind of like, I was helping him, but he was making sure like I was doing things right. But then after a few rounds, he realized I don't really have to look over him. Like he can handle this. This is like not a problem for him. So he like took his hands completely off. He's like, okay, can you just do it all? Like, do I have to know? I don't have to watch over you anymore. So I kind of inherited the work from him. And so, it's I was doing it and everyone was happy. And, that was my first project, just sort of, taking over a project from someone else. and kind of making it my own. And that was my opportunity to kind of show people that, I was okay. But because, like I said, I didn't have a partner, everyone would like, so then there was a bit of a reputation. It's like, oh, he did the whole domination by himself. He's not bad. So everyone who needed work done, like, oh, can we get Hussein to help on this? And so there's a bit.
Do you feel too nervous doing it, or you're like, okay, I can do this. I did it.
Honestly, no. It was the same mindset I had in school. I was like, try, take care of yourself, try your best, be good to people. And that, if you're doing that, then it's good. Whatever happens afterwards is not in your control. So that was the same thing. It was, when I got the internship, to be honest, there wasn't like a big celebration. There wasn't a big reaction. It was like, okay, yeah, it's another step. And that was even my mindset in school, is like, I wouldn't dwell on things too much. So like, even I remember when my first award, I was like, yeah, it's good, but what's next? And what's next? And I just kept, I don't know if that's good or bad, like to stop, and maybe it's good to sometimes stop and celebrate, or, be happy, or, look at what you've achieved. But that was my mindset of, okay, what's next and what's next? And so when I got the internship, it was like, okay, like I didn't celebrate the internship. I was like, okay, you have to get hired, and then.
So that goes exactly to my next question. What suggestions you give to students to like how to transform your internship into a contract or a full-time job?
But like, as I was saying, because I was a gun for hire, and everyone who needed art direction work, doing a comp or getting a deck ready or anything, because I did the first thing well, you're building a reputation of like, oh, he's handy, he's useful. So, I mean, beyond the basics of just being detail oriented and making sure you do things right, a few things that I did that at the time I didn't do intentionally. I was just being me, and that just is the way they worked out. Is, there was a moment, I remember I was an intern, and we were presenting all the work for the Calgary Stampede that we were done. We were going to present at the client.
Okay.
And this was my first client presentation. So I was like, okay, I didn't know how client presentations went, so that naivety of being fresh worked in my favor. So I didn't know if I was supposed to make the deck or someone else was supposed to make the deck. So I went and I'd mapped out the whole arena in Google Docs and placed every single piece of work next to the map.
Oh my God, you did this homework cup of
exactly
on the asset.
So I'd done that, and I printed out like 11 by 17 like maps of the arena, and had little like thumbnails of all the pieces of where they're going to go. And so I did that, and I stapled it, and I made like copies for everyone. And no one knew I was doing this. I was just doing this so like, oh, well, I got to prepare. How do I present a presentation the best? This is what made most sense to me. And then in the meeting room, I printed out the papers, and I got tape, and I posted everything up around the room. So that they can like walk around the room and as if they're walking around the arena, and they can kind of get a sense of how the pieces will work together.
Okay.
And the account team, then they're like, what are you doing? And I told them, I'm like, I printed these things and I put them up, and there's these copies for everyone. And they were kind of like surprised. They're like, oh, this is amazing. Like it was obviously not my responsibility, but I was just thinking for myself. I was like, okay, what's the best way to present this? And just did it. Obviously there's a balance between, just doing, saying, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And it's like, no, hang on. There's a way we do this. But also presenting your ideas. Like if you have an idea for how something should be done, there's no harm in saying it. It's a suggestion of like, hey, look, maybe we should do it like this. And the other people, the account people or the other creatives would look at that as like, oh, he's thinking more than just the basics. And so when this presentation happened, I had like this whole plan in my mind, and they're like, and they were surprised because I guess they're not used to people doing things in a different way, or going beyond what they're used to. So that naivety of being fresh and being a student worked in my favor because I didn't know how they did it, so I did it the way I thought it should be done. And the client loved it. and it was like everyone started talking about it in the agency. It's like, oh, he did this thing, and they got everything ready, and they
it
set
became
it up.
the talk.
Yeah, it became a
Oh,
thing because it was like, and this kind of goes back. Remember the story I told you of like not when I was in the co-op and not knowing how long a poster took,
yes.
and I rushed the poster and I did it as best as I could in like a short period of time. It was the same thing. It was like I didn't know how like presentations worked, so I just did it the way I thought was best. And even that meant going, above and beyond. And so that was a moment where, had I just said, okay, I'm just an intern, you guys tell me what to do, and I'm just passive, that would have not happened. The presentation would have not been as good. And, no one, you're kind of making a name for yourself by being proactive and saying, okay, no, I think there's a better way to do this. What if we did this? Of course, being respectful to the way things are done, but also having an opinion and, being a part of the team versus just like the team is here and you're on the side, just the intern helping. You want to be a part of the team and, make the experience better. We talk about not being, being missed. So when you're not around, like, oh, I wish Hussein was here. I wish, Raf was here. I wish they were here, because you're useful. So, that's hard to do if you're passive, because if you're waiting for everyone to tell you what to do, then they might forget you're there, but if you're always there and you're peeping your head out and saying, oh, what about this? What about this? And that was a moment where, that was just for a presentation, and, that was not my responsibility, but, that also still works for when you're presenting work as an intern. Every time we present work, or I present work, I'm like, oh, I did it like this. So this is what you asked for. These are the 4 mock-ups you asked for. There's these 2. I don't know if you have some extra time to like look at them and tell me what you think. I think they can work because of X, Y, and Z. And, like a creative director is so busy that, yes, they may have told you to do something a certain way, but, that's because that's how much time they had to give that direction. But they may have not have thought of other things. But you have a bit more time than them. So,
but you need to be fearless to
exactly
take that step. Yeah.
Well, you have to be different, right? You have to stand out. And if you're not like, you have to be willing to fail, and that was my mindset, even from school, is I was willing to fail because I knew that would be my weakness. So if I failed at like typography, I was like, okay, well, you have to get better at typography. So if I went to present a work to a creative director and it didn't go well, they didn't like the work, I go, okay, that's a place for me to pinpoint and to improve. So there was never fear, because I was like, look, you're young, you just started, you're not going to be perfect. So, make all the mistakes you need to, because that's how you're going to get better. If everything was smooth sailing and easy, you're not learning anything. So
then at one time, then you get a job, and then they place you in a client and a copywriter and everything. Then you become
it was my last couple weeks as an intern. There was another intern that came from Miami Ad School. Mm-hmm. He was a writer, and he was an intern writer. I was our director writer. They're like, okay, you two guys work together. And I remember when I was in school, when I was in 3rd year and 2nd year, I would purposely work with different people. Like there's a lot of people who would work with the same pair because it worked, but I would purposely at times work with someone different or someone new, because I'm like, I want to learn how to work with different kinds of people.
That's very smart.
And how to deal with different personas, and like, someone's gonna, just learn different people and learn a bit about myself too. Like, how will I react if someone is really assertive or someone's really passive, Mm-hmm. My whole mindset was find your weak points and make them better. So I was like, okay, I'll challenge myself to work with different people, work with new people, not just the strong teams, but like the different students, out of the strong group. So that taught me a lot as well, of like how to deal with people, how to motivate them, how to, just manage the relationship. Mm-hmm. That benefited me when I was matched with a copywriter. I didn't know him. We went from not knowing him at all to, you guys are going to work together every day now. I was fortunate that his name was Caleb. He came from my ad school. He's a good writer. And he's a bit older than me. And so he was really hungry. He was 32. So he was 32 and I was 21. But so he was really hungry to achieve things because, for him, this is like this was his second chance at a career.
I see.
He tried to have, a few other things at the beginning. Those didn't work. And this was his thing. Like he really wanted to succeed. So I was fortunate to be with a partner who was also hungry. Because yes, there's people who get internships, but they have different levels of hunger and desire to push and to, stay late and do that extra bit of work. So I was fortunate that I got paired with someone who was, had the same mindset.
Let me know two of your favorite jobs at FCB on those more than 2 years there.
Yeah. This might take a minute. You might have to edit this out. cut the gap. No, I think or
the one that are really the
one. There's a few that come to mind. I remember the first time we worked on BMO. So, through working on BMO and through doing that presentation and, building that relationship with the BMO team, I worked a lot on BMO, and BMO is a huge client for FCB. It's the one that keeps the lights on, so there's a lot of BMO work all the time. It's like a beast. So I worked a lot on BMO, and I remember, it was, very early into our partnership with me and Caleb. And we built a good relationship with the BMO team, and the creative director started to be like, oh, there's a good team that can work on BMO. So there was a time when they were writing TV scripts, TV spots for BMO. And they weren't really cracking it. The couple rounds with the client just kept changing their mind. And so the team was a little tired. And so they're like, okay, let's bring in a new team. And, they gave us a chance. They're like, oh, you guys, have a go, write some scripts. And, as an intern, you're not thinking you're going to write TV. You're not touching TV for many years. So, we were really excited, of course. So we the first time writing a TV script. So we just went, and that was a nice moment for us to learn how to work with each other and just coming up with ideas. Like, what if we did this and this? And so we wrote a bunch of scripts, not knowing how well they're going to be. The first time you never know if it's going to be good or bad. And we showed it to the critics, and to our surprise, they liked the work. And it's not easy to write for BMO because there's a certain formula, a certain template. So they were impressed with the work, and they presented the work. So they presented our TV scripts along with another team's, and the client picked our TV script.
Wow.
So here you are. And I think this was at this point, I think we were juniors at this point. It was a month or two into being a junior. And the client picked our TV script. And we're like, okay, what now? So that was everyone was surprised. We were surprised.
Then you got to be part of the production.
Exactly.
And
that sort of, that cement that got people's eyes on us again. Of oh, this team is they did something, they're doing a TV script and they're juniors. And so that, obviously got us into production, and things started to happen quickly, and we, you're kind of thrown into the deep end. So you have to learn everything on the spot. So I remember that because it was the first one, and it was like, wow, we're doing a TV spot and we're juniors. That was a great experience. And then fast forward, that was the springboard, off of that, we were doing more TV, and, now they would get us to write TV scripts because they did it last time. So
they have a scene for it.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So, we started writing TV scripts as juniors. And then we got, another script in and another script. And I think now we've done 3 BMO spots. And that helps you grow, super quickly because there's production, it's a whole different world, and a whole different level of pressure. So that helped us grow a little, hugely in ourselves, as creatives, but also in the eyes of other people. Oh wow, they're doing client presentations, they're doing pre-production meetings, things like that. So that was the springboard. But one that I recall recently that we did a TV spot for Air Canada. And it was a different kind of TV spot, like not really what you're thinking, because it was COVID times and Air Canada can't fly, so they wanted to do something for the holidays. And this is fast forward. This was last year, so at this point we got promoted from juniors, so it's a long way from the BMO stuff, but it was kind of another moment of like, oh wow, we're doing a Air Canada holiday spot.
Okay.
And it was a unique kind of spot. So because Air Canada wasn't traveling, they had these gift cards. So they're trying to get some sales. So they're promoting these gift cards to give over the holidays. So if we can't fly now, but when we can, here's a gift card to go towards your ticket. So what they wanted to do also was not make it only about the card, because COVID was happening, and this is when everyone was doing, the thank you frontline workers and the COVID commercials and stuff like that.
Of course.
So they wanted to do something similar.
Hard brief, Jude.
Yeah. But they're like, we don't want to be like, we don't, people are tired of thank you frontline workers. So like, how do we make it different?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially we had these stories of these amazing people across Canada who had just done like amazing service in their own communities. There was the story of this lady up in the way north in Canada, and she was delivering food on a sleigh with her dogs and delivering it to schools that don't have food.
Oh my God!
So amazing stories like this are just like really inspiring people who were saving lives during COVID. And keeping people going. So we had a few of these stories, and the idea was to surprise them, to bring them into. We were going to do it in an air hangar, but we couldn't get an air hangar, so we did it at just like a giant arena. And the idea was to we'll call them in and fly them over and tell them, oh, you're just coming for an interview to talk about the work you did. But we're going to take them into an experience. So what we did was we worked with a great director, and he did interviews with their friends and families. Just saying thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this amazing footage of the director talking to their friends and families. And as they talk about the people, and they tell the story of how much they sacrificed and, like the depths they went to help people,
Mm-hmm.
because these kind of people, they don't want the spotlight. They don't need their name up in the headline.
They do for the
exactly. They do it because that feels right to them.
It's their nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we wanted to force them to be in the spotlight because they deserved it. So we did these interviews, and we built these videos of friends and family saying thank you. And it was very emotional. Like, people in the videos were crying. It was really beautiful. And we flew them over. We said, come over. You're just for an interview about the work you did. But they would come in, and we'd welcome them in, and we'd point them in a direction, and they would go in, open the door, and it's this giant arena where we had a giant 30-foot by 60 feet like TV screen, basically projection.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell them there's a spot for them to stand, and the projection turned on, and it was their friends and family saying thank you.
Oh my God! And
they're just in this dark, massive arena with this massive screen. It's just them and the screen, and the people saying thank you. And we were there all capturing it, right, to get their reactions. And it was super beautiful. Like the people were crying, and
Mm-hmm.
we knew what was in the videos. We knew that there was like this one moment when this husband and son were saying thank you. And they start crying, and we knew the video was coming. So the lady was there watching the video, and I'm like holding Kim, like, it's coming. They're going to have that like really emotional moment. There's another really beautiful moment of this, this lovely Asian girl, and she was traveling the world helping, volunteering and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was their parents saying thank you. And, there was a moment where the mother was saying, I don't say this enough. But we're very proud of you. And that was like, everyone broke down. The cameramen were like, it was just such a powerful moment.
Everybody on.
Everyone was losing it. And we captured their reactions and their videos, and so they would turn around, and there's 2 Air Canada representatives, and they would say, thank you for all your work, and this is a a gift card from us to you, so that when we can travel, you deserve a vacation. And basically, we created a TV spot out of that. It was a really beautiful spot, but that was an amazing project to work on. First of all, because we're doing an Air Canada holiday spot, so that's huge. But also to do one that was had real people, and it was kind of a nice feeling. That was really enjoyable too. So yeah, that was one that sticks out in the memory for sure.
The thing is super cool to listen for you from those experiences. It is for me too to catch up with you.
Yeah,
I wanted to hear now on our last part of the podcast is I know that you gave a lot of different directions and to the students during this recording today, this talk today. But what I think are you reviewing books too right now, people? So what is their main mistakes that you see that to avoid, and what kind of other tips and hints for the students who are looking to get into the industry?
When I'm looking at books, I'm less concerned about like how the colors they chose, or did they kern the copy properly. Like those details you can learn and you can practice. What I look for is a student who didn't leave a stone unturned, if you will. They thought about everything. They're like, okay, we have this great idea, and I see this all the time. There's a good idea, but they don't push it. They don't go, okay, how does this work on?
That's very interesting that you're saying that, because I was doing student reviews with Jeff today, and we're talking about the exact subject today. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
Exactly. It's like they have a great insight or a great nugget, and they're onto something, but they don't push it. They don't put that extra 5 hours in. Go, okay, what can we do? How do we push this? How do we take this really great insight? And that's the foundation. You have a great insight, you're onto something, but you just do one execution. And you do, okay, well, we're just going to do this one thing, and it's going to be a run, and everyone's going to see it. But I look for the student who goes, okay, we had this great idea, and there's so many ways we can do it, and there's like a 360 campaign, and this one piece connects with the others, and we're going to get influencers, and the influencers do this. And when I see that, I go, okay, this is a person who was not worried about how long it's going to take to mock up, or how long it's going to do to like make it look good. They were just thinking, how do we get the best idea on paper? And when we have something good, push it and make it as best as we can. So that's the one thing I always say is like, you have something good here. You have a good, interesting idea. Push it. Just go, like, think, how can we make this better? How do we kind of, take this to the next level? Because that's what you can't teach. You can't teach someone to push harder, to go and be nonstop and keep pushing and pushing. Kerning copy, picking color, the technical stuff, that, if me as someone who's going to, I'm not going to hire them, but, as if I'm looking at it that way, I can teach you that. That's easy. But seeing having the drive to push extra, I can't teach that. That, and, sometimes students get too caught up in the execution itself, and there's less focus.
How come?
Like, there's sometimes they'll find one execution and go, this is it. This is the idea. But sometimes the execution is not the idea. The execution is a version of the idea, but you have this really interesting concept of, I don't know, whatever it may be. Like, I think back to one where it was a student had an idea about, underground music is sort of like, swept. It's kind of overshadowed by mainstream music. I was like, that's an interesting problem. There's something there. So I think their idea was something like, we put like wild postings of people's music. So I was like, okay, like that's an execution, but you have the insight is more interesting than the execution. The problem there is more interesting. So how do you push that? And, just like the one idea, I was like, do you do it locally? So, like if you're from Toronto, it's a bunch of wild posts like the Toronto artists, because you're more likely to be interested in them if they're from your city. Or maybe you're in a city that you don't think has musicians, and then you find out, oh wow, there's actually like, Hamilton has musicians or Ancaster has musicians. Like, how do you push it and, turn the dial a little bit more? That's what I see. And that's always the feedback I give of like, you have something good here. Dig deeper in this one, because sometimes students don't know which tree to bark up, so they have like 4 ideas and they've executed them in one way, but this one, one of the 4 has a really interesting insight. There's more here, keep digging. And it's just getting them to do that, to find that extra bit of magic, if you will.
Hussein, well, one last question.
Yeah.
What do your parents think about you now?
They still don't know what I do.
They still don't know what it.
They're happy. Of course, it's like, by the end they can see that. Okay, why he's going to New York? Why is he going to New York? So they could see that it was kind of becoming more of a serious thing, and bridging that gap between I'm a student to no, I'm transitioning into the industry, into a professional. Exactly.
You can just say you're an engineer of ideas. So you're
exactly. Yeah, which makes perfect sense to them.
Yeah.
So they're happy. They're like, if you're happy and you seem to, you made a career out of it. So they're happy that I'm happy, and I've enjoyed it. I've not looked back. I'm still enjoying it. So yeah, I think credit to you guys and credit to the program to take someone who didn't know what advertising was to being in the industry. And I know it's obviously it's not just that simple. There's obviously the student has to put in the work, but
it's all about you. We just shake you up.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's all about the work you put into it.
Yeah.
And amazing. So Rusey, Rumaithi, and we got it here an amazing talk today. Art director at FCB, and I hope to see you very soon for a chat, for beer natches, or for coming to classes or something like that.
We have
because
to.
we have to. Yes, it's been too long.
For sure.
And I talked to all the interview people here because it's been too long with everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we're continuing here, guys. We'll have I think more 2 chapters for Raf's Cast, Tales from MohawkAd, and this is it. This is the episode with Hussein, and I see you next time. Thanks so much, Hussein.
Thank you. Bye now.
Yeah.